How y'all doing out there, good people? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Today we will be coming out of Luke 15:11 through 20. Luke 15:11 through 20. And we are going to be titling this Moving Before God. Moving Before God. It was so it's going to be obviously a lot more reading than we usually do, but that's okay. Glory be to God. I'm titling this Moving Before God because this illustration can be used to make a couple different clever points, but I would just like to take it and extrapolate from it the fact that we can move before God, or we can ask God or pray to God for inheritance or blessings before we're ready for them. So we're going to call that moving before God. And let's dive into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read, explain. So let's dive into it. To illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had two sons. The younger son told his father, "I want my share of your estate now before you die." So the father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. Wow. So we're going to take that first beginning part of this illustration and say, when we pray to God, or when we try to find routes that go around God because God is not moving fast enough for us, the prayers aren't being answered fast enough. The prayer line is busy. God is busy. God is on the move. So when we ask God for something and he's not granting it right away, we try to find ways and avenues around God to get to what we ask for. He's saying here, "Daddy, you taking too long to die. Can I get mine now? I want mine right now. You're taking too long to die." So in other words, we may say, God is taking too long to give me that new house. God is taking too long to give me a new a husband or a wife. God is taking too long to bless me with this or with that. And we find ways to get what we want, not going through God, but going around God. Think about that. What in your life, or what have you done, or what have you asked God for that you did not go to and through him to get? You went around him to get it, and either when you got your hands on it, you lost it, or it left your sight before you can even lay your hands on it. What did you have in your life that you didn't go to and through the Lord to get? And either you had it and it's gone, or it left before you can even lay your hands on it. God, you taking too long. I got to find me a new route. See, sometimes God's no isn't no. Sometimes God's no is be patient. Sometimes God's no is not right now. Sometimes God's no is you ain't ready. Inheritance given too early is not a blessing, because you will not know how to handle what you are asking the Lord for. You will not know how to be a good steward over what you are asking God for if you are not mentally ready for what God is trying to deliver to you, in which you are asking him to deliver to you. You asked him for a new house, but do you have the finances for that new house? Do you have the credit score for that new house? Is your credit score good enough for your interest rate to be low so that your rent and your mortgage don't still equal the same, or maybe possibly your mortgage is even more than the rent you was paying? You asking God for that new car. But is that new car going to fit into your financial plan? Is that new car what's best for your finances? Is it going to put any strain on you? See, we live in a world where instant gratification is glorified. In this case, this young man wanted instant gratification. He wanted instant gratification because he said, Daddy, look, I want mine now. I don't even want to wait for you to die. I want mine now. As if he knew or had a plan on what he was going to do with what his father left him. I want mine. I need mine right now, Daddy. Instant gratification. Instant gratification will be the fall of mankind. Instant gratification will be the fall of mankind. The microwavable life. I need it right now. I got to have it now. I need the Facebook likes right now. I need the claps right now. I need the people to be happy for me right now. I need the glorification of mankind. I seek mankind's glorification rather than the glorification from my heavenly Father. In other words, I seek mankind's glorification fills me up. Mankind's glorification fills me up. Not the glory that comes from the Father. Not the glory that comes from the Father saying, well done. Well done. Not the glorification that comes from the Father saying, well done, my faithful servant. But the glorification that comes from man. The glorification of a like on Facebook. The glorification of a congratulations. The glorification of, man, he doing it big. She doing it big. The glorification of, man, they got this, they got that, they got this. Instant glorification. Instant gratification. Instant. Like they make that instant rice. We want it instantly. Instant gratification. In some cases, instant glorification. You want people to glorify your instant gratification. You want people to glorify your instant gratification. Rather than allowing God to glorify and magnify you so that you can have a line of longevity, a line that reaches further, a line that stretches further, an arm that reaches by the Father glorifying you, magnifying you, multiplying you, giving you more abundance. The Father making you great. You would rather seek instant gratification and glorification from man. In this case, this young man wanted his inheritance before his father died. Before his father died. This young man wanted his inheritance before his father could even go to his heavenly home. Let's read on. 13. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. A few days after his father had blessed him with what he asked for, he moved to a distant land. He moved to a distant land. 1, I don't want to be in the presence of my father because I don't want my father to see that I can't handle what I asked him for. I don't want to be in the presence of my father because I don't want my father to see that I cannot handle what I asked him for. It says he packed all of his bags and he moved to a distant land. He didn't want the father to see that I can't handle the inheritance or the blessing that you're about to entrust me with because I asked for it way too early, because I didn't have the wisdom, I didn't have the knowledge in what and where that I was going to place this inheritance or this blessing. So I spent it up in wild living. I spent it all on Christian Louis Vuitton. I spent it all on Gucci. I spent it all on Prada. I spent it all. I bought stuff that didn't mean nothing to me. I bought stuff that did not bring in income. I did not create a passive income with what you have entrusted me with. Therefore, I spent up all the money. I spent up all the money. 14. About the time his money ran out. Bring this close. I should have put my glasses on. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. Ain't it crazy how when we go around God, when we make our ways or make it our business to move before God, meaning and go around, we're asking him for something, meaning that we should patiently wait until heaven open and that blessing is released from heaven and it trickles down here on earth into our hands. We should patiently wait for the Lord. But when we go around God, when we move before God, when we don't go through God and we try to go around God, we find ourselves in these pickles. We find ourselves in these situations and circumstances of which we would not be found in had we went through the Lord. These are what I call the self-inflicting wounds of life. The self-inflicting wounds of life. This young man inflicted this upon himself by asking for an inheritance that he knew not how to handle. So all that will happen to him in his process of being lost or disseparated from the Father, all that will happen to him is a self-inflicting wound of life. That wound, that trial that you're facing is self-inflicted. I'm sure we all know what self-inflicted means. That trial that you're facing is self-inflicted. That car you went and bought and you knew you couldn't afford it and it got repoed, that's self-inflicted. That check you blew and you knew you was going to need money, that's self-inflicted. Going to buy nails and going to buy this and going to buy that and living above your means and trying to keep up with the Jones, that's self-inflicting. Let's read. 15. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into the fields to feed the pigs. Now we gotta assume that this young man is Jewish, and we know that in these times, and probably still the times today, Jewish people do not eat pork. They do not eat pork. So he sent him in the fields to feed something that he do not even eat. He do not even be around. Something that is unclean in his sight. Something that would be considered unclean to the Jewish community. He sent him in to farm the unclean animal. Now, 16. The young man became so hungry that Even the pods he was feeding the pig looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. You know you doing bad, or you know you down bad when even what the pig is eating look good to you. We all know what pigs eat. Anything. Anything. Even the pig's dinner looks good to you. God has taken him from living in a place of royalty to looking at a pig's dinner and saying, boy, that sure look good. There's a lesson in that. There's a lesson in going from royalty to eating out of the garbage. There's a lesson in going from royalty to eating out of the garbage. Be careful what you ask God for if you don't plan on waiting on it. Be careful what you ask for in life if you don't plan on doing what you need to do to keep it and being a good steward over whatever God is entrusting to you. Be careful, because some of these things can take you from royalty to eating in the garbage. And then it says, but no one gave him anything. Ain't it funny how when we go around God, it'll seem like we call our family members and we call our friends. It is in those times where they can't be there for us. It is I'm sure that every one of us that's watching, every one of you guys that's watching this video, and every last one of us have been in a situation where we went around God and we found ourselves in a particular situation where we needed help and God was not answering. So now that God is not answering, we call our friends or we call our families. It is in that time where God is telling everybody, peace, be still. Don't do nothing for him, because he went around me and he must go through this trial without me and without you. And if you interfere with God's punishment for someone to learn a lesson, he will get you too. That's a whole nother topic. But I just want to say this. If you interfere and God teaches someone a lesson, then he will get you too. Think about that. We've all been in situations where we went around God. We went around God and needed help, and he stopped answering. And when we called that family member and we called those friends, they did not answer. And if they did answer, they could not help. We've all been in those situations. 17. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare. He came to his senses and said, man, even the royalty back at home, even the servants that's living in royalty have enough food to spare. But here where I am, no one is giving me nothing. God has closed every resource because I tried to go around the source. I disconnected. The Father was the source. See, as long as he was in the Father's house, he was connected to the source. As long as you are in the Father's house, you are connected to the source. But when you move to a distant land to hide your face from the Father, you disconnect from the source. And the Father shuts down all the resources. The Father begins to shut down all the resources. Because why? Because you have disconnected from the source. So as long as he was in the Father's house, he had food to eat. As long as he was in the Father's house, he lived in royalty. But when he moved to a distant land to hide his face from the Father, the resources wasn't there. Well, the resources is back where the source is. The resources is back where the source is. Let's read. I'm going to read 17 again. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and I am here dying of hunger. He came to himself, meaning that he realized that, man, I moved to this distant land. I asked my father for a blessing or inheritance that I wasn't ready for, and I done moved here, and I messed up. I spent all my money. You know, I'm out here wild living, and now it's brought me to a place of hunger. The way that I have been acting has brought me to a place of hunger. The way that I tried to go around the Father has brought me to a place of hunger. The way that I tried to go around the Father has brought me to a place of hunger. 18. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. That is probably the most important part of this entire text. Father, 18, I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. That is probably the most important part of this entire text. Accountability. Accountability. Accountability is the most important part of this entire text. He held himself accountable for sinning against his earthly father and his heavenly father. He held himself accountable. Daddy, I'm sorry. Father, forgive me for I have sinned against you. Accountability is the most important part of this entire text, because without accountability, he would have continued to go through that storm. He wouldn't have even came to. He came to, and then he came to accountability. He came to his situation. The trial that he was facing made him come to, and once he came to, he accepted his accountability. You see, God sends us through things that make us come to. He'll send you through the darkest times of your life for you to come to. Sometimes it even may cost people the tragedy and tragic events of life for people to come to. In his case, this was a tragedy. No, it didn't cost him his life, but it was a tragedy because he went from royalty to eating in the garbage. This was unfamiliar territory. He's in unfamiliar territory because he went from royalty to garbage. That is unfamiliar territory to somebody that's used to having the finer things in life. Coming from having the finer things in life to having to be broke or having to borrow and beg and hum and bum is unfamiliar territory. Let's read. 19. And I am no longer worthy of being called your son. So not only did he take accountability, he's moved himself. He's tried to move himself from the bloodline. He's saying, I am no longer worthy of being your son. I am no longer worthy of being who I am to you. I have sinned against you, and I have sinned against God, and I am no longer worthy of that position. I am no longer worthy of your trust. I am no longer worthy of the relationship we once shared. Let's read. Please take me on as your hired servant. I am no longer worthy of being your son. Please take me on as your hired servant. Mm, mm, mm. Ain't that something when you the son of a king? Ain't it something when you a son of a king? Ain't it something when you the son of a king and you gotta go as low as being a servant? Even Christ don't look at us as being his servant. Mm, 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 mm. Ain't it something when you the son of a king and now you at the point in your life, by going around God, you are at the point in your life to where now you become a hired servant. Let's read. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. Ain't it something how we go off into these distant lands and we find ourselves in unfamiliar territory, all because we had to go around God. And it may take some of us years, it may take some of us months. And we go out into the world and we begin to get lost. And the more we get lost, the farther we go. The more we get lost, the more disconnected we are. The further we get lost, the less we seek. The less we seek, the less we try to find. The less we see God's face, the less we feel God's presence. And we go off in life and we get lost. But when you come to, when you come to how you have sinned against the living God. And the Father sees you in that distant land because he sits high and look low. He sits high and look low. So the Father sees you in that distant land. And when he recognizes that you come to and he see you strutting back up to him, he see you strutting back to him, he see you strutting back to the kingdom, he see you strutting back to the kingdom, he opened his arms and embrace you. He opened his arms and embrace you. Again, this is called moving before God. Moving before God. Man, listen, family. God is love. God is peace. Always, I love y'all. I'm out.